Hello students, I am Mahima Thakur, Assistant Professor, Department of English from Ismail National Mahila PG College, Meerut. Welcome you all for today's lecture. So the topic of today's lecture is feminism. So what we learn in this particular lecture, we'll learn about feminism, what is feminism, the features of feminism, the precursor of feminism, and we'll also learn about the three waves of feminism and the three phases of women's writing, which has been given by Ellen Showalter. We'll also learn about the financial independence, this concept, which has been given by Virginia Woolf, and we'll also discuss her work, her essay, A Room of One's Own. We'll also discuss the fictional story of Judith Shakespeare and the concept of female language and social transformation by Virginia Woolf, and also the concept of androgyny. So first we'll see that what is feminism. Feminism is not a single unified idea, but rather a range of political movements, ideologies, and social movements. Its primary goal is to define, establish, and achieve equal political, economic, personal, and social rights for women. A key part of this movement is ensuring that women have educational and professional opportunities equal to those of men. So we can say that feminism is the belief in and advocacy for full economic, social, political equality for all genders. It seeks to dismantle patriarchal structures and end sexism and ensure equal rights, opportunities, and safety for women and girls. The movement has evolved through waves, addressing issues like suffrage. Now, what is suffrage? Suffrage is the right to vote. It also addressed the issues like reproductive rights, workplace equity, and intersectional discrimination. The aim of feminism is to end unequal systems, not to oppress man. Now let's see the important elements of literary feminism. So the first one we see that literature through feminist lens. It talks about literature through feminist lens, and a very important term is there, which is gynocriticism, which focuses on women's writing and the history of female authorship is one aspect of feminist literary theory. In this literary feminism, if we see the elements, we see that the challenging the canon. It promotes the inclusion of female viewpoints and criticizes male-dominated nature of established literary canons. If we talk about the development of themes, so it examines how women's writing changed from being feminine. What is feminine? Following male ideals, to feminist, which is criticizing patriarchal rules, and female, which is validating female experiences as true. And if we see the global perspective, so we see that feminist literature examines a variety of culture, social realities, such as the particular difficulties in Indian writing, despite having its roots in Western philosophy. So these were the elements of literary feminism. Let's move forward and see that how is feminism presented in literature. So how is feminism presented in literature? The stress on appreciating women's perspectives is a central issue in feminist literature, as demonstrated by the writings of pioneering authors like Virginia Woolf and Charlotte Perkins Gilman, who shed light on the intricacies of women's lives and social limitations they encounter. Now, the precursor of feminism, Mary Wollstonecraft. Historically, Mary Wollstonecraft is seen as the mother of this movement, or we can say precursor of this movement. In her 1792 work, which is a vindication of the rights of women, she argued that women deserve the same political and educational rights as men. So this was the very famous work, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, in which she argued about the same political and equal rights for women. Now let's move forward and see the three waves of feminism. So to understand the history of this movement, scholars divided it into three distinct waves. The first one is the first wave, which is considered from 1830s to early 1900. And in this wave, we see that this period focused primarily on legal rights. Women fought for the right to own property, enter into contracts, and most famously, the right to vote, which is also known as suffrage. It was deeply connected to other reform movements such as the abolition of slavery and temperance movement. Now let's see the second wave. So this wave moved beyond legal rights to look at women's daily life. It focused on workplace, sexuality, family, and reproductive rights. A major breakthrough during this time was distinction between sex and gender. Sex is considered as biological and gender is considered as a social construct. The famous slogan, "The personal is political," emerged here, highlighting how private struggles were actually results of a patriarchal system. Then we have the third wave, which is from 1900 to present. Informed by post colonial and postmodern thinking, this wave challenges the idea of universal womanhood. It recognizes that women's experiences differ based on their race, class, sexuality. It embraces diversity and uses new media to challenge the old stereotype. So this was all about the three waves. And one thing I would also like to mention here, that there is also a fourth wave which seeks to empower women utilizing digital media. So these were the waves of feminism. Now let's see the three phases, which is also a very important part of feminism, the three phases of women's writing. So in her landmark 1977 book, important 1977 book, A Literature of Their Own, this American critic, Ellen Showalter, argued that if we look closely at history, we can find a distinct female literary heritage. She divided the history of women's writing into three specific phases. The first one is the feminine phase, which is from 1840s to 1880. Then the feminist phase, which is from 1880 to 1920. And the third phase, the female phase, 1920 to present. So the feminine phase is the phase of, we can say, phase of imitation. During this period, women writers tried to fit into the world of man. They imitated the dominant male artistic standards and social norms. To be taken seriously, women used male pseudonyms like false names for their writings, and a very fine example is George Eliot. In this phase, women did not see their writing as a way to express their unique female experiences or female point of view. Rather, they tried to write like the masters. Then the second phase, the feminist phase, which is known by the name of the phase of protest. This phase began as women started to gain moral social power and eventually won the right to vote in 1920. So this was the great achievement, we can say. They won the right to vote in 1920. Women writers began to protest against male values and the restrictions placed on their lives. Their literature became a tool at that time for social change, challenging the male monopoly on culture and demanding women's voice be heard in the public sphere. Then we have the female phase, the phase of self discovery. In this phase, women stopped simply imitating or protesting man. Instead, they turned inward to explore the female experience from a female perspective, or we can say female point of view. They began to create their own unique styles and forms of storytelling that were independent of male traditions. Showalter calls this gynocriticism, which is, we can say, a method of analyzing literature that focuses specifically on women as writers. So, this was all about the three phases of women writing. Now, see the financial independence, this concept by Virginia Woolf, and we'll also discuss her work, A Room of One's Own. Virginia Woolf is one of the most important feminist thinkers in literary history. Her views are primarily found in her 1929 essay, A Room of One's Own. Here she says the link between money and creativity. It's her most famous statement, and she says that a woman must have money and a room of her own if she want to write a fiction or if she want to be a writer. So it is very important for a woman to have a room of her own and some money. She also talks about material context and economic freedom. She says economic freedom is equals to intellectual freedom. By material context, she argues that literature does not just happen, it is tied to materialistic circumstances like money, social status, and political power. By economic freedom, which is equal to intellectual freedom, she believes that power to think for oneself rests entirely on financial freedom. If a woman is constantly worried about money or household chores, she cannot have the liberty of person. So, if she wants to create a great art, it is very important to have money of her own and a room of her own. Then, further, she talks about the fictional story of Judith Shakespeare, and to prove her point, Woolf creates a character named Judith Shakespeare, which is the imaginary or fictional sister of William Shakespeare. First, she poses a question and then answer that question. So she asks that what if a woman had been born with Shakespeare's genius? And her answer is that she would never have become a famous playwright. Why? While William went to school and worked in theatre, Judith would have been kept at home, denied an education, and forced into marriage. So, this was the condition of women at that point of time. They were denied for education, and they were kept at home. So Judith would have also been kept at home and denied an education and forced into marriage. So the lesson here is, or the problem is that Wolf is trying to show here is that it was not lack of talent that kept women from writing, but women were equally talented. But the closed doors of society and lack of opportunities were there. So this is how she presented this character, Judith Shakespeare. And now let's see uh, what she says about female language and social transformation. So beyond money, Woolf believed that women needed to change the way they actually used language and viewed the world. She basically tries to say that women should use their own perspective, their own point of view. They should not imitate the male language. She says that writing in female language, she argued that women should not simply copy the way men write. When she talked about the male language, she believed that the inherited literary language was male, and it was direct, confident, and often shadowed by the male egotism. Then she stressed or emphasized on this fact that expressing female experience, where she says that the male language could not properly express the rhythms of female life or relationships between women. She encouraged women to craft their own language which express or reflect their own unique experiences and thoughts. So this was all about, she says that how a female should use female language and transform the social norms. Then we have the concept of androgyny. So Plato has also used this term. Woolf introduced this idea of androgynous mind, and she believed that every person uh, have, or there are both male and female parts in one person or every person. Here, androgyny, we can say, is the combination of female as well as male characteristics. However, the normal state of being for a great artist is when these two parts work together. So she says a great artist is when these two powers work together. So, however, the normal state of being for a great artist is when these two powers work together. So, to be truly creative, a writer should be man womanly or women manly. So, this was the concept of androgyny, and at the end, we can say that for Woolf and for feminism as a whole, achieving equality isn't just about women getting the same jobs as men. No, it requires a transformation of the very infrastructure and fundamental values of society. Women must have the material means like money, their social status, space, and the intellectual courage to define their own tradition and languages. So, this was all about this lecture. Thank you so much for being with me, and we'll continue on this topic in the other lecture. Thank you.